it's April on us already, and although the winter's been a little bit longer than we would have liked, and March certainly wasn't as warm as it was last year, it hasn't been desperately frosty, but it has been really wet and miserable to get things going. Now, in the vegetable garden, there's quite a lot you can do at this time of year. Direct sowing into the soil means we can really get ahead with putting in lots of salad crops for summer, and then if you make repeat sowings every 4 to 6 weeks, you'll guarantee having things like spring onion, lettuce, courgette all the way through until the autumn. Now, I've had a rummage in my box of seeds, there's some falling off already, and picked out a few things which are really good to do at this time of year. Now, spring onion is brilliant because it can be a filler crop, so between plants which you're planting now that are going to come into fruition later, this can go in between and will fill out, stop weeds, and is harvestable, so that's a good one. I'm going to be sowing spinach because it's better sown earlier in the year so that it gets its roots into the ground before it gets too hot. Otherwise, it's very slow to get going and a little bit wilty. Early carrots I shall be doing now because they'll be ready in about June, July when I'm back from the flower shows, which would be perfect. And the only thing to remember with carrots is you need stone-free ground, which can be a little bit hard to do. So either make yourself a raised vegetable bed, like some of these are here, with soil that you've artificially imported and screened so there isn't lots of stone, or put them into deep containers. The other option is to grow Parmex, which is a little round carrot which doesn't go into the ground. Now, you can see it's spring because all around me other people are in their gardens doing DIY, so there's all sorts of noise going on in the background. The last thing is a little bit of a novelty, and this is a purple radish. I love radish and I just want to see how that goes. Going to be doing 3 types of sowing into the garden. This year I'm trying permaculture alongside traditional kind of open ground. So I'm going to be doing 2 of those things, and I'm going to be doing some filling in here. Now, in the bed behind me, you saw me just preparing the soil. So by doing that, what I mean is I've dug over the soil previously, I've taken out any of the weeds, and then I've gone over it with a rake to get it nice and level, treaded on it to firm it down but not too hard, and then back over again with the rake to give me a fine tilth on the top surface, and it's that I'm going to be sowing directly into. Now, that ground, I'm going to say, to my regret I'm sure, is stone free, so into there will go my carrots, and also because it doesn't get lots of sun early in the morning so the dew stays on the soil, I'm going to be sowing direct the spinach. So those are the first 2 things I'm going to do. And then in the same bed, in between some winter kale, which has been very slow to take off, I'm going to be putting the spring onion to prove my point that it's a really good infill crop. So let's get started with those. Now, the key here is little and often. We don't want to sow the whole packet of seeds into the soil, just a little bit, because you're going to be sowing a succession of that every 4 to 6 weeks to make sure you've got a continuation of crop. And I've also got a handy kneeler, thanks to Hortus Loci, who are growing some of our plants for Chelsea. So rather than just my wooden boards, I will be slightly comfortable. This is the garden tool I spend most of my time using. You can claw that way, you can get roots out with that end, and it's really good for vegetables because you can use it a little bit like a hoe to draw your line. So in my prepared seed bed, I'm just going to make a V into the soil. Now, you can do this with a hoe, you can do it with a trowel, you can also do it with a piece of stick if you really had nothing else to hand. And the general rule of thumb is to make it shallow, because most vegetables are actually quite happy rooting on the surface, so don't get them in too deep, because otherwise they won't get any light and they won't really germinate. So I'm going to put in my carrots first. These are the early carrots that I was talking about. Now, you'll see most packets have a smaller packet inside. Be careful opening this one. And in there are going to be all of your seeds. I'm just going to put some in my hand for you to see. They're actually incredibly small. Carrot is a member of the umbelliferae family, so the same as Anthriscus and Lovage and lots of other plants. So spread them evenly along that trough that you've made, being mindful as to how many carrots you want to eat in a year, and make sure you put a plant label in so that you don't come along and try and sow something else over them. And then basically just bring the soil over the top. They will germinate in about 4 weeks easily, 2 to 3 more likely. And then next to them I'm going to do a double line of the spinach, because spinach can be eaten in a salad raw, can be eaten cooked traditionally, you can make soup with it, all sorts of things. I'm saying probably, I want to use more than I think. So I'm making 2 drills, that's the line. Just gonna put the carrots away first. I'm going to make 2 drills of the spinach in exactly the same way. Now, spinach is a much bigger seed, so I don't need to put that in my hand. I can easily spread that. Again, not too many. And then if I find I'm harvesting this at a rate of knots, because you can eat the first leaves within 4 weeks, I can always sow some more. As long as I store my seed in a cool, dry place that doesn't get damp, so that the seed doesn't go off, I can continue using that all through this growing season and possibly into next year. But always check the seed packet and make sure you're within viability, because otherwise, as viability falls, you just get disappointment. It's easier to just buy more. Okay, so that's that. Very nicely. Now, because we're sowing direct into the ground, we don't need to water that. In fact, it would be quite, you could end up washing everything away. So what you want to do is leave that seed bed now. If it doesn't rain within 2 to 3 days, once the soil has settled again, then lightly water it. But otherwise, leave it to do its own thing until they start germinating. And once you see your first true leaf, you can start watering if it's dry. But if it's not dry, don't water. There's no need to waste resources. They will grow happily without. Now, I'm going to go on to my infill crop, which is the spring. Now, you can see here are my kale. I'm not actually sure how successful they're going to be, but I want to give them a chance because they've been growing. It would be a waste just to completely rip them out. So I've gone over, weeded in between them. And what I'm going to do is firm the soil down a bit and just make one line of spring onion down the middle of this row. The philosophy is that will grow tall and provide shade for the plant that's growing underneath. And you can do this with lettuce, radish, spring onion. It maximizes your cropping space, and each plant helps each other in the growing season. Now, these are red spring onions, which I really like. I think they're just a little bit more colourful. They are very fine seeds. Be careful how many you sow, because again, you'll want to make another sowing of these possibly in 2 to 3 weeks. And I just lightly put the soil back over. Now, the other things that you can be doing if you don't want to grow vegetables at this time of year, but you can direct sow cosmos, English marigold, rocket, which is edible and flowers, honesty, which will flower next year because it's not flowering in the same year that you're sowing it, and lots of other half-hardy flowering annuals. You can sow directly into borders. Now, if you're doing that, rake the ground like what I've done here, broadcast the seed over more broadly, and then with the lawn rake go over the soil and rough it up so that they have some soil over it. But it doesn't need to be too precise, because those kind of hardy annuals are absolutely used to germinating on open soil themselves. So you're just doing kind of a bare minimum intervention to make sure that they germinate. Now, the next thing that I'm going to be doing, and it's a first for me, is trying this permaculture bed. So if we go over to that bed, I can explain what I'm doing, and in there I'm going to be sowing my first crop of vegetables. I'm going to be doing 2 things there this year. So direct sowing like we've done here in seed form to see how that goes, and I'm also going to be putting into that bed my potting marron pumpkin and my courgettes and some tomatoes. I'm also going to put some tomatoes in the open ground to compare how that goes through the year. So we'll go over there and look at that now. Now, this is the permaculture bed. And what I've been doing is reading, and there's lots of different ways of doing it. So I'm basically, like most gardeners, making it up to suit myself and see how it works. The first thing was to make the bed slightly higher than it was before, and to lay a thick layer of rotting branches, sticks and herbaceous material from the compost heap. Once I've done that, I laid a thick bed of straw, and then what I'm going to be doing is a mixture of things: sowing direct or making planting pockets. Now, to sow direct, because I've run out of compost I've made myself, because as you know this garden's only 3 years old, I've bought some organic soil conditioner, and I'm laying a thick layer here to sow my seeds into. And then basically these shallow rooting plants will use this soil this time, and then as the straw breaks down, these will become the planting pockets for next year. When I'm making the planting pockets, I'm going to do a slightly different method. So with this, I'm just going through it and slightly massaging it to make sure there are no really large lumps. You could use compost that you've made at home, and you could use sterilized soil, but what you don't want to be using is peat in any way. There's absolutely no way. So this bed is of soil that I've brought in, is about 3 inches, so what's that, 5 to 7 centimeters deep, and I'm going to be using exactly the same principle. Now that I've smoothed it out, I'm just going to be broadcasting into here some seeds that I'm going to be using. Now I'm going to be splitting it half-half. I'm going to try lettuce there, and here I'm going to be doing the beetroot. No, I'm not. I'm going to be doing the radish. Don't know where I got beetroot from, it's because I planted that already. Now, same applies. Making the drill with the edge of your hoe. It's a little bit more tricky with this organic matter because there's a lot of twigs in it, so don't expect it to be accurate. I mean, you can just run your fingers through to make sure they're good. Take the gloves off whilst you're doing the seeds. Now, radish seeds are generally quite big, so you can see those. If, like me, you spill a few, just drag them out, it doesn't matter. And remember, unless you're feeding an army, you don't need lots of radish, so you can keep those, sow again in about 2 to 3 weeks with radish. And then, because this isn't soil, and it is conditioner I've brought in, I'm going to put my gloves back on to go through, press it down, again no watering, let the rain do that, and I'm going to put 2 markers there, and then on this side I'm going to be putting my lettuce. Now, as gardeners, we tend to use a lot of plastic sticks or little wooden sticks as markers for seeds. And what I'm going to try and do here, it's just for my own benefit to know they're there, is just put in 2 plain bits of stick. I know that's radish there because there's nothing else in this bed yet, so that will be fine. What I'm going to do on this side is slightly different as a test. I'm not going to sow lettuce in drills, because the problem with lettuce in drills is that you end up with them very, very tight together and they bolt really quickly. So what I'm going to do is spread the lettuce over the surface of this space and then lightly broadcast some soil back on. Now, this lettuce is quite big and floral, if you like, and also it's red leaved. And I was talking to a friend of mine recently who gardens not a million miles from here, and she does the permaculture, and one of the things with permaculture and straw is you can get slugs, or we get slugs everywhere, but she said to me that red lettuce is never eaten by the slugs. So I'm going to try it because I'm a little bit fed up of trying to control the slugs, and I don't like to use anything other than beer traps because I like them to die happy. So what I'm going to do is broadcast very finely lettuce over that space, so that as they germinate I can pull out the thinnings, leaving maybe 10 big ones in their place to go through. And again, with lettuce, you want to be repeat sowing that every 4 to 6 weeks. So once they're on the surface, I'm just gonna fluff around the soil, use some from the edges to just lightly cover them until I can't see them anymore. That's it. It's very, very simple. I won't be watering that. I will if there's no rain in 2 to 3 weeks, but I'm really excited to see if this permaculture system works, and, well, we know it works, but if it works in my kind of interpreted system, and if it's better than the endless weeding and cycle of adding compost to my traditional beds, and see how that goes. That's April really for me. It's all about sowing seeds and weeding, and I hope you have a great April.